Hi everyone, it's Raina. This video is for those people who have their Sun, Moon, Venus, and or Mars in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is the last sign, so I did this one last. And these are prominent positions because they are inner planets. I could have included the rising sign, I suppose, although that can be more of how you carry yourself and how others perceive you. And as you get older, that may fade to some degree. And I could have included Mercury, but I didn't think that that was really connected as much or influential when it comes to love itself. The Sun will be so because the Sun is, totally influential as a whole. The Moon is your emotional nature. Venus is how you view the concept of love and how, in other words, the romantic relationship. Some people embrace it fully and are very romantic themselves, and some people are more cerebral, they're more detached, or they are more practical, like the earth signs, where they really think of love relationships maybe in terms of, hey, we want to have a family together, or hey, I want a companion, or even like, hey, we'll combine our incomes together, and hey, we'll be able to build a life together. Like they're looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint. I want a companion, yada yada, but it's not really like love as we think of it in Harlequin romances. I always want to know if it's a Harlequin romances. I say Quinn, and it might be Kin. Okay, now the other thing too is talking about Pisces. What is, who is Pisces? And my experience doing private readings, or just even thinking of celebrities. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, as I stated. It's ruled by Neptune. And Neptune is a planet that is very ethereal. It's not worldly, in other words. It's the 12th house rules past lives, spiritual dimensions. In mundane terms, it can be suffering, places of suffering, prisons, hospitals. Like it can even be, I'm sure it can be like a monastery, because it can be like the house of the hermit. And the point is that it's not that Pisces is all about suffering. It's just that the martyr can be connected to this sign and the 12th house. Now, and the reason that I put these, that I mentioned more than just the Sun in Pisces is because I noticed when I was doing other types of readings that the Moon in Pisces can have similar concepts or express itself similarly. Not 100% the same way, and same with Venus and Mars. Now, what is an example of this? Well, Pisces is a sign that's very sacrificial. And it's like the Christ complex. And I would also associate that with the 12th house of, the spiritual, sacrificing the material for the spiritual, sacrificing for other people. But the thing that I have mentioned time and time again is that I don't really like the word sacrifice. It kind of makes me nervous. If somebody said, I sacrificed for you, I would feel guilty. And I think Pisces is a sign that can feel guilt, just like no matter what, because I think that a lot of it has to do with past lives, because the 12th house represents past lives, where the person has some sort of memory of something that, transpired back in the day, 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. They don't know what it is, but they just know that something happened. And so it's almost like doing penance, like kind of what prison is supposed to be about, which is about kind of like sacrificing your pleasure to be able to sit and think about what you've done. I mean, obviously, it's really not like that because of how it's set up. But you could even say that when we talk about a monastery where you're spending a lot of time in solitude, contemplation, and all that stuff. But in terms of sacrifice, guilt doesn't really serve a purpose if it doesn't just teach you a better way. If it keeps you stuck in some sort of pain and reproachment, it's not really helpful. And also the idea that sacrifice is something noble, when sacrifice can mean that you are depriving yourself of something for somebody else's well-being, there's a sense of lack in that to me. There's a sense of like, I don't have something because I gave it to you, because I sacrificed. I don't have this time anymore. I sacrificed, that time to be able to work to support you while you went through medical school. I sacrificed. This happens in relationships. One person forgoes their career dreams so that they can put somebody else through school, put somebody else through whatever. Maybe that person's trying to make it in an artistic career, and it's really hard to just jump in there, and it takes a lot, like a music career. So the other person, it's funny, that's what happened to Stevie Nicks with in Fleetwood Mac and Lindsey Buckingham. She was a waitress, and she was like, she wasn't that young either. I think she was close to 30, and she was busting her butt while he was, doing his thing. She might have been younger than that, actually. And then she finally just said, I got to do this. I can't remember how it went. But yeah, that happens sometimes with people who are artists. And, a lot of you Pisces people may be artists yourselves, and yet you're working some straight job so that you can help your partner to make it big or achieve their dreams. And maybe their dreams are always elusive, and you're still being a dreamer for them and holding out hope that they're going to make it, and the years are slipping by. So my number one tip is actually sacrifice is overrated. Does that sound horrifying for me to say that to you? What I was thinking about this the other day because I said the word selfish to my partner. Not about him, but just I was talking about something. And I said selfish, and then I thought to myself, that doesn't sound so bad to me anymore. Selfish. I'm kind of sort of about myself. I'm selfish. And the thing is that Pisces rules the 12th house, which is about the collective soul. It's about, hey man, we're all one. I am you as you are me, and we are all together. And that's fine, but we also have individual souls, individual paths. And even though the 12th house is all mushed in there, smushed with all this, spiritual energy and stuff like that, we still have our own paths and our own dreams. And never should you relinquish your dreams because somebody else is telling you that they need you, and you say, oh, I'm needed. because that is something that Pisces wants more than anything in the world, is to feel needed, is to feel that they have something to sacrifice for. And my partner actually said that to me, and he has Mars in Pisces. So these attitudes can show up because Mars is the way that you act. And he said something like, I need something to sacrifice for. It was a very interesting statement. Because, yes, I can see that some people may be motivated by this and they may feel this desire. Because remember, too, that Pisces, you are old souls. And Pisces is associated with spirituality and intuition. And so you may just have a natural impulse to forego your ego, forego your ambitions. And, again, talking about the monastery, the 12th house, the house of the hermit, is the 12th house full of type A, go, go, go? Of course not. It's actually, there's a passivity of the 12th house. It's like be still and know, not go, go, go. So that kind of attitude permeates their relationships or your relationships where you are passive. And when I'm doing private readings and I see somebody and they have, even just like me, they might have the sun in Aries, but they have Venus in Pisces. And I can already tell that they probably have issues in relationships because of this sacrificial nature. I've witnessed this personally, somebody I know. You can be bold as heck and still in love relationships fall in love with the wrong person. That's the classic one. Same if you have a hard angle from Venus to Neptune. Or if you have Venus in the 12th house, and these are the kinds of things I look for when I'm doing personal readings. So with these inner planets in Pisces, and you don't have to have all of them. I was just saying, some people might. That would be really wild. But, you might have one or two of these. And what's going to happen is that you're going to feel, at least in the romantic side of life, maybe not in every area of your life, but you're going to feel like maybe an attraction to somebody who is broken. I noticed that too, the wounded bird syndrome. And so you might feel like you have to save them from themselves. And that is one of those faulty things that can occur. I have to say, Venus is exalted in Pisces because it's considered the most selfless type of attitude. So it's not to say that if you have Venus in Pisces, you're screwed. It's simply saying that you have to get very clear on why you're doing what you're doing. Don't do things out of a sense of guilt, a silly sense of guilt, which can cover up low self-esteem, but also sometimes past life influences. But regardless, that sense of what I would call irrational guilt. And to really embrace this idea that you deserve happiness and you deserve to realize your goals. This isn't about just being a helpmate. Being a helpmate is wonderful. Everybody should try that. But, that's not all that you're here for. It's just to assist other people in making their dreams come true. And number 2, the tip for you guys in love, know thyself. This is another difficult thing because I'm going to read number 3 because they're kind of connected. Set boundaries. Don't tolerate bad behavior. Now, Neptune is your ruler, ruling the 12th house, and it's about all is one, so there are no boundaries. Neptune is about fog, which is very hazy, clouds. So the nebulous means, kind of hazy, unsure, confusing. Neptune can be about confusion. But part of it is not having boundaries, not having clarity. And people who are Pisces tend to have very lax boundaries. They tend not to, they tend to put up with a bunch of crap. And then when they finally have had enough, everything is so far gone that it can be very hard to kind of dig yourself out of that. So you have to kind of be vigilant at the onset of a relationship. And this also, I would say, and I didn't put this here, but maybe this is kind of like a thing, be aware of what you're dealing with. Do not put on those rose-colored glasses that have your name on them. And be able to see if you're dating somebody. Do people even date anymore? I sound like I'm from, Father Knows Best or something. But if you're seeing somebody, hooking up with somebody. No, I'm not going to say hooking up. That sounds like friends with benefits. But if you're seeing somebody, and this is like first date, second date, third date, and you see, and they're just pounding back the drinks. And you grew up with alcoholism because Pisces, like I said, can be about addiction. So a lot of times, and also, the planet Neptune in your chart, if you have Neptune in the fourth house, hello, that could certainly be growing up with addiction, or in the first house too. And, there are some things I look for when I do private readings in that regard. But it's very interesting because it's like you may just think that that's normal behavior. You may know that it's effed up, but you may not think that it's all that uncommon, and you may just shrug your shoulders and say that's the way it is. Look at Dad. Look at how he's pounds them back. Or maybe you make excuses. Oh, yeah, he gets drunk, but it's only on the weekends. But he's, getting like really drunk, and maybe there's some bad things that happens when he drinks too. So it's not just because somebody doesn't drink every night doesn't mean that they don't have a problem and that it can't affect you. So you have to be willing to see things as they are and not make excuses for bad behavior, and therefore not tolerate bad behavior, because I think this is one of the big problems of Pisces. Again, that passivity and learned helplessness, because I do believe that there may be particular trauma in people who are born with a prominent Pisces. And especially like seeing, I would say even like having parents that really showed their own, like flaws or weaknesses. And in some cases, the Pisces person has to take care of their parent, like again, with addiction, with irresponsibility, with mental illness, those kinds of things. And growing up fast, but being a caretaker, which can in adulthood lead to picking the wrong partner, picking partners who have these problems at the onset. I had somebody get very irate with me, and, maybe I kind of understand, in retrospect, that they misunderstood what I was saying and thought that maybe I was being really harsh, because I think I was talking about Virgos, which is your opposite sign. And sometimes opposite signs can have similar traits. Virgo is the sign of the servant. And I had another person get mad at that the other day. I'm not a servant. Virgos aren't servants, because they think servants are bad or pathetic or what have you, which is ridiculous. It's just, it's funny how people are so subjective, and they take offense to things like that. But anyway, somebody that I was talking about I think it was for this series, and I was talking about Virgos, and I said about finding somebody that you can be, that can make you feel needed. And I know somebody like this, who goes from one relationship to the other, where the person that they are currently with romantically has medical issues. And this person who heard my video was, I guess, upset about that. Probably they're experiencing that themselves, and said, "Oh, so you're not supposed to ever be with anybody who has some kind of," and I think I said something like bipolar, some kind of like situation like that. And of course, if you're with somebody and they get diagnosed with a condition, I'm not saying you should leave them or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on the front end of things. Yes, of course, if you fall in love with somebody and they happen to be in a wheelchair, that's like awesome, because it means that you have that ability to see them beyond that challenge or limitation. But what about people who fall in love with those who are clearly incapacitated, and it's a pattern? They always fall in love with people who are very who are incapable of taking care of themselves. Like they have, they're very, very dependent. They have, maybe they could take care of themselves, but they don't, or whatever it is. Or they have some mental health issue that kind of feeds into that. But if it happens over and over again, you have to look at what is the person really, why are they doing that? And sometimes it's because Pisces is a natural healer. They're naturally empathic. And so there's a tendency to really feel for people who are suffering. And that is a beautiful trait. But when you are getting involved with somebody one-on-one in a romantic setting, it's a different type of thing than being charitable and maybe volunteering at a hospital or something along those lines. And making that distinction is so important for Pisces, so that you can have a relationship of equals, not one where you are playing nursemaid all the time. The other, and again, I realize that there may be people who fall in love with somebody who's in a wheelchair, and they will naturally be, much more the caretaker, in the caretaker role. And maybe if you happen to meet somebody in this capacity, that's one thing. But if you're always finding that you're going after people who have these kinds of major challenges, that you may feel like you have to sacrifice again. There's that sacrifice. And it may not be done for the reasons, for purely, I'm not going to say altruistic reasons, but you may have other things going on, like some kind of irrational guilt, like you feel like you can't get what you want, you just have to give others what they need, and things like that. And so I have given 3 tips, but just to reiterate about know thyself, Pisces, because your ruler is Neptune, can sometimes try to identify with their partner, that becomes very important. So relationships can be very important because you may even take on the characteristics of your partner, because Pisces is not only a water sign, but mutable. A mutable water sign can conform to your environment. So it's very important that you choose a partner who is very positive, who is good to you, because you're very influenced that you're sensitive. And the last thing you want to do is be with somebody who doesn't get you, who doesn't appreciate you, and who is on the negative side of things, because that could influence you greatly in an adverse way. And knowing yourself means that you will know what you want and what you don't want in life. And that will make it easier to discern who's good for you and who just isn't compatible for you. So I hope that you enjoyed this, Pisces, whatever you are. And thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.